Yesterday, I was on Threads when I saw this post. This lady is giving an update on her pet and says, oh yeah, right after we saw the vet was arrested for murdering her husband, so I'm not really sure what to do. It's actually kind of funny, but literally everybody was like, we did not see that coming. Of course, this guy decides to mansplain, murderer isn't always a serial killer. And she's like, I know, she just didn't seem like the murdering kind. Now, before I tell you all the rest of that story, because it actually is interesting, I want to say, as a lawyer who was a prosecutor and now has been a defense attorney for the majority of my career, I actually like murderers, if you want to know the truth, because most murderers murder once. They murder someone who was asking for it, usually. Like, my favorite murderer ever caught his wife in bed with his best friend and he killed his best friend. Like, I get that. I'm not saying it's right. But he did his time and he came out and he was a wonderful member of society. He had never broken the law before. He's not broken the law since. So in general, murderers, I would much rather be locked in a room with a murderer than locked in a room with two divorcees, if you want to know the truth. I actually did lock myself in an interrogation room with a murderer one time accidentally, but the cops had a good laugh, but I wasn't scared. So, of course, I had to Google and figure out what was going on. So this is the lady, and honestly, she looks a little evil in that picture, but in all fairness, mugshots are never the best pictures that we take. But when I was reading it, I was like, they live in Hitchcock Crossing. Sorry, but she had no option but to pull a murderer. Just kidding. So the arrest warrant said that with malice aforethought, which means they're trying to say it was premeditated. For the record, premeditation just means that you had a moment to deliberate. It means it wasn't sudden passion. It means you had one moment. It can be a millisecond to think, do I really want to do this? Yes, I do. So really, there's always an argument with lawyers, whether it was first degree malice aforethought or second degree sudden passions. He shot him multiple times in the back while he was lying on the floor. Now, ladies, if you've got to defend yourself, make sure that they're facing you. I was watching a 48 Hours the other night and they were like, yeah, she shot her husband in the back several times. That's never going to be good self-defense. You've got to shoot him in the front. And my mother, while we were watching that 48 Hours, she was like, I would have just called his name when he turned around, then I'd shoot him. So at her hearing, her attorney said she was a victim of domestic violence before this happened. She'd gone to the hospital. She accepted separation documents, but she didn't want to press charges at the time because he was a Marine and she didn't want his military career to be in jeopardy. People always say, why didn't the woman leave? Why didn't she report? We have a million reasons, and I'll get into those in a moment, but this is one of the more common ones that I see, that the man is in the service and they don't want to mess up their career because even though the man has hurt them, they still love the man. Like that, their ability to love doesn't go away just because a man hurts them. In the comments on Threads, this lady said, I'm glad your pet is feeling better. Was she the victim of domestic violence and just finally found the guts to stop him? 93 women in Australia have died because of domestic violence this year alone. I'd hate to see the U.S. figures. So the UN put out a report saying every single day last year, 140 women and girls were killed all over the world. So that's globally. 140 women and girls are killed every single day. Why don't women leave? Because when the victim tries to leave is the most dangerous time in the abuse cycle. As someone who's helped abused women leave, I always warn them, we've got to have a plan in place because if I get a restraining order and you leave, that restraining order could be your death warrant. So we've got to make sure you're doing this in the safest way possible because that is when an abuser is likely going to kill you. Why don't women leave? It often takes 7 times before they finally leave. Why do women stay? Because maybe they grew up in a family where that was normal and they don't know what healthy and unhealthy relationships look like. Maybe she loves him and he pretends to regret the violence. Maybe she wants to try to make the relationship work and she believes she can help him change. Maybe she blames herself. And I see the self-blame a lot in my cases, and I know that's what's kept me in difficult relationships. When they love bomb you at first and then the love bombing stops, the only thing that you can do really is say, well, what have I done? Because they help you. They gaslight you and say, this is what you did. And if you did this differently, then I would be the way I was in the beginning. There is hope and help. You can always get on Google. Here's the information in America for who you can call. Let's be sure that we are supporting women and girls and that we're not trying to blame them for not leaving sooner, things like that. It's reported that 90% of women in American prisons are there because they finally killed their abuser or fought back. 90% of women in prison finally had enough.